With your consent, we will begin this discussion. First of all, I would like to thank the Rector of the National University for showing such a great level of political knowledge and strong governmental stance, because this is the fourth or fifth meeting that we have with the students of the National University. And today, I will hold this discussion with the heads of this university, with the professors. At this very moment, as we are having this conversation in this bright and warm hall, our soldiers are standing on the cold, under the snow, at the border, and standing for hours on end, not even stopping. So if we spend a little time covering this topic, I think it will be beneficial to all of us. This discussion is not a holiday conversation, but a working discussion, the plan and documents, because the main goal is for us to gain a basic knowledge and understanding of this issue. So, we should form our position when explaining this topic to our students. To others, we have to have our own stable position in society. As the border dispute between Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan continues today, it is almost a century old. If the first disputes were in 1924, for example, in 2022, this dispute has been around for 98 years. I would like to first clarify the essence, that is, it is very easy to answer this question. What is the dispute between Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan in border issues? It's a very simple question that we should have a very clear answer to. At this point in 2022, by all accounts, 211,000 hectares of legal lands of the Republic of Tajikistan are in the possession of the neighboring country. This number has two characteristics. First, it is the official data that the Minister of the Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Tajikistan announced from the UN tribute to the whole world. If you paid attention to the speech of the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Tajikistan on September 23rd at the UN General Assembly, he stated that Kyrgyzstan has 211,000 hectares of our land in its possession and intends to and will legalize it. This is official and from a state position. But in fact, and scientifically, this figure of 211 hectares is low. I have had dozens of trips to those regions. We gathered the area of every district and village. At least, it's true so that not all. Where are those 211,000 hectares of land now? That is the general picture of the dispute. In yellow, 3 areas. If you pay attention, at the top we have an area of 84,000 hectares of land, which is part of the Jamaat Histevars district of Babajan Gafurov. If you look at the maps, these 84,000 hectares were the territory of Tajikistan 40, 50 years ago, but gradually became the territory of Kyrgyz. And at the moment, the road which even passes the Tajik T Karakum is divided, and on the side of the road is Kyrgyzstan. Consequently, It is a territory that is under the control of the neighboring country without any official documents. The second area of 56,000 hectares in the Andarak Mountains of the Masjaw district is the lower yellow area. Why is this region not talked about in the media? Because while the two regions are crowded and considered a place of human conflict, the Andarak region is not populated. It is usually mountains and forest, therefore there is less controversy. There may be a hunter or a tourist or a shepherd in that area, but the main disputes take place in the densely populated areas. That's the second area. The third part of this very controversial and large, strategically important 61,000 hectares of land from Isfara city land. That's the third yellow side. And if you paid attention, this was arranged in such a way that it resulted in Voruch being separated from the mainland of Tajikistan. The white inside is Voruch, and the yellow around the occupied territories belonging to Waruch and Isfara. Here is the land at the expense of Jamaat Surkh Turko, which gradually passed to Kyrgyzstan. This is the third territory. And also another 10,000 hectares in Babjan Gafur district, Ochkalov district, and Jabbar Rasulov district in Spitamen district, in Kanabadam district. There are also disputed plots. In general, this is the general picture of the dispute. To get a better understanding of the analogy, in this article I have mentioned that this area is 2,110 kilometers squared. Open up the Wikipedia or Dushanbe's website, and it is stated in there that Dushanbe's territory is 203 kilometers squared. This is like from half of Wahdat to half of Hisar, from half of Rudaki to half of Varzab. The Dushanbe itself and its surroundings are 203 kilometers squared. So that's a figure of 2,100 kilometers squared. The land that is in the neighboring country is equal to 10 times of the city of Dushanbe, at the expense of Tajikistan. If we combine the cities of Isfara, Kanibadam and Khujan together, it will be the same. Let's take an example from overseas. For example, the three countries of Bahrain. It is a country. Bahrain is equals to Andarak, that is 3 times the size of the country Singapore. It is not just the dispute about the Baruch or crossing the Hajala junction, but is also a big dispute, a big geography that the two countries, and especially us, as the owners of the land, are discussing. What is the point of the conflict now? The essence of the conflict is that the official 210,000 hectares for which we have documented over the last 90 years were gradually given to a neighboring country, and since we were part of that same state, they were given for temporary land use. The Republic of Tajikistan, as an independent state, demands the return of these lands from its near neighbor after independence. The expiration date has expired, return it, and the neighboring country at the moment refuses to return them, which is the essence of the conflict. This means that one country says return the lands, the other country says we won't do it for such reasons. So what is the current situation? There have been over 200 meetings on this issue so far. Every week, we have meetings of various commissions. Our common border with Kyrgyzstan is almost 1,000 kilometers. More precisely, it is 987 kilometers.
ما 987 کیلومتر مرز داریم. در همین طول مذاکرات 20 سال
In the 20 years that we have been negotiating, 602 kilometers have been agreed upon. We have agreed with the Kyrgyz side on 61% of the border. For example, we have an agreement on the Maghreb district, in the Lakhshi-Jirgatal district, in some part of the Kanibadam district, in areas near Khujand, but the remaining 39% has not been agreed and remain unknown. But one of the factors reducing the credibility of the neighboring country is that the agreement between the two countries to sign a 61% agreement has been repeatedly put forward for signature by the heads of the state. In particular, the Republic of Tajikistan officially approved this document. If you pay attention to two things, first, in the speech of the foreign minister in the September at the UN General Assembly, it was just said that we are preparing this part for the agreement. The two sides have agreement, but unfortunately, the neighboring country is not signing it. These same words were said in a speech by the President of Tajikistan in April 2021 in the town of Isfara in Voruch. It was said that we have agreed on the same border. Unfortunately, for reasons beyond Tajikistan's control, the neighboring country side refuses to sign it. Why do they do that? On account of the fact that by not signing the same 61%, all 100% of the border is kept illegal. Therefore, the same attack that happened last month in the Lakhsh district, for instance, it was an attack in the area of agreement. But they say that since there were no full agreement, the whole border is being challenged. If we summarize all the agreements, there are 10 factors that cause conflict. We'll just name them. First, drinking water. Second, irrigation water. Third, residential land, homestead land. Fourth, pastures. Fifth, agricultural land. Sixth, a road, a highway, for instance, the road from Isfara to Voruch. Seventh, a passageway. What is the difference between a passageway and a road? For example, if we say that roads are ways of communication between districts and communities, a crossroads are streets within villages, because in some regions, for example, in the village of Khoja Allah, the local structure is the same. This house is for Kyrgyz, this house is Tajik, this house is Kyrgyz. To enter your neighbor's house, you have to go through Kyrgyz territory. On the same street, Kyrgyz civil servants can detain as a violator of the Kyrgyz border. To get to the neighbor's house, which is 30 meters away, a person goes to the top of the village and then comes to the neighbor's house. This is the issue of crossing, and why this happened. If there is time, we'll talk about it later. 8. Bridges. 9. Natural resources such as coal and water. 10th. And the 10th issue is the issue of graveyards. For example, we have 4 to 5 cases where ancestral cemeteries of people living in Tajik villages have now become the territory of Kyrgyzstan. A graveyard where their fathers and grandfathers are buried for hundreds of years. You can see that it is their father's grave, their grandfather's grave, but you can't go near it because it is a foreign country's territory. To go to his father's grave, say a blessing, he must obtain a permission and obtain a visa to go to travel to a neighboring country. In particular, there are 2 graveyards left in Khistevars. There is a cemetery in Chorqishlaq in Isfara.
قبرستان در اون طرف مونده.
Thus, the aggregate of such issues shows that the crisis takes place in the context of local population's own lives.
عالی است. ولی وقتی که
But when there is a conflict between people, the neighboring side, with the help of the military, turns this crisis into a war, a crisis between the two countries, a crisis between the two armed forces.
نیروی حربی بعض اقدام‌های
Some of the actions of the Kyrgyz side in this region show that it is not in favor of returning the lawful lands of Tajikistan.
دادن زمین‌های قانونی تاجیکستان نیستند. سه مثال
Here are three examples of this process. First, these lands are in Kyrgyzstan at the expense of Tajikistan. They were basically included in the Osh region in the 1950s, 1970s, and 1980s. There were many documents signed between Leninabad and Osh region.
امضا شده است. ولی سال 1990
But in 1999, when we were dealing with domestic issues,
قرقیزستان در یک اقدام بسیار آگاهانه
the Kyrgyz Republic quite consciously established a new region called Bakhtent.
ولایتی نو تأسیس داد با نام ولایتی بادکند. ولایتی بدکند میگن خودش. ولایت بادکند نبود.
At the expense of these lands and lands nearby, there was no Bakhtent district. That district was formed in 1999.
سپتامبر سال 2021
1 year ago, on September 10th, 2021, a national law that is a constitutional law more important than any other ordinary law, the national law of the Kyrgyz Republic on the special status of the Bakhtent region was passed.
خصوصی ولایت بادکند قبول شده است. و این قانون یکی از
This law is one of the laws that has two parts, one of which is a secret. We don't know what's in there, but the open part has many important things in it.
هر کس یعنی که
It says that Kyrgyz people who are currently going to live in the newly formed Batkent district will be given a package of social benefits.
امتیازهای اجتماعی داده میشه. مثلا کسی رفته در بدکن
For example, those who go to live in the Bakhtent are exempt from all taxes.
صاحبکارانی که در بادکند صاحبکاری میکنن از اندازه آزاد.
Entrepreneurs who do business in Bakhtent are exempt from taxes. Teachers who go and teach in Bakhtent get double pay. Doctors who work in Bakhtent get the same. Military personnel who serve in Bakhtent, their service is double credited. 1 year counts for 2 years.
معاشش هم دو برابر.
They have double pay.
از جمله بندی 14 همین
In particular, Article 14 of this law, which I have mentioned here, states that the state is obligated to support the creation of Kyrgyz settlements in Bakhtent,
قرقیزی در ولایت بادکن مساعدت کند. یعنی اگر شما بخواید روید به
meaning that if you want to live in Bakhtent, the state will build roads, run electricity and water, provide building materials so that people can come and live there. They are even calling to forgive prisoners if they go to live in Bakhtent.
چرا چنین میکنه؟ چون که
Why would they do that? Because Kyrgyzstan knows for the fact that there is no indigenous Kyrgyz population in this region.
ضروری قرقیز نیست. اگر ما تمام همین حوزه رو
If we consider the entire area, excluding the borderline, there are only about 110,000 people living in these three of our jamaats
سرحد همگی
and the same line on the other side of the border.
زندگی میکنند. 110,000. و از این 110,000
Of these 110,000 people, 104,000 are Tajiks. Voruch Jamaat includes 38,000 people. Torko includes about 40,000 people. In the same area, the Surkh Jamaat. These are Tajiks who have lived there for thousands of years. And the Kyrgyz are only about 6,000 people. The same area on the Kyrgyz side, on the same borderline.
و این بالانس بسیار نااستوار است.
And this balance is very unstable. There is a huge difference between 104,000 and 6,000. These 6,000 people have been brought in over the last 30-40 years.
حجتای نواز شما جماعت واروخ روه جماعت واروخ از دوره تأسیس SSR وجود دارد.
The Jamaat Voruch has existed since the creation of the USSR and has all documents. The Jamaat has registrations of births, deaths, and also populations. Until the 1975, there was not a single person whose nationality was Kyrgyz in the books of these Jamaats. Hence, this is why the Kyrgyz population appeared in the 75s, and later on, even the names of these villages first appeared in the documents in the 70s. This is why Kyrgyzstan knows that there is no population. By giving such privileges, they are going to build up the Kyrgyz population in that region. This is also an important public policy of theirs. And the last reason they want to preserve and protect this region because the new law of the Kyrgyz Republic passed on October 20th, 2022, which was passed with a lot of controversy, provides that the population of the border areas of Batkent Oblast must be armed. They are armed with automatic weapons, machine guns, grenade launchers, and light handguns. And look what we write in the agreements, in the protocols, that both sides have decided to withdraw their armed forces from the borderline. We assume that we stay back for 5 kilometers. But they turned the village itself into a military base. The population is armed, which is, for instance, itself a military unit. These factors show that the neighboring side is not as optimistic returning the land as we are. As of the main aspects of this article is the discussion of the documentation between the two sides. Why is the documentation important? Law professors and international relations professors are here. The document is important because it is the only basis on which we can rely. Only a document can prove the topic of the conversation, what the limits and the boundaries of the discussion are. This is why we say that in order to define the national boundary between us, using a notion that the Tajik negotiation team always relies on, the name of which is the documentation that defines the state border. We say that if you have a document defining the state border, that area is from you. If you don't have such a document, then this area is disputed, or we have such a document. So, what is the document that defines the state border? The document defining the state border is the same document that first passed through the internal procedures of the same state. That is, it was officially adopted by the Supreme Council of the same state, the legislative body of the same state, in the form of the decision of the Supreme Council. Secondly, passed into state procedures. Both sides have to agree on it and sign it. Third, the subject of the same document is the border, about the border itself. Why is this important? Because in the section of Kyrgyzstan's documentations, we see that they bring some general agreements and say that we must settle the border according to these documents. For example, they bring an agreement on the establishment of the CIS, which does not deal with borders. Fourthly, both sides recognize it, and after the official signing, the ratification has taken place. Such a document that meets all the requirements is considered a defining document, a state document. Why is this very important to us? Because the Kyrgyz side does not just come to these negotiations empty-handed. You see, these 211,000 hectares are almost randomly appropriated, but they have documents for about half of these lands. This is where the dispute comes from.
اونا بحث در کجاست ولی حجتشون چیست من اینجا
But what are the documents?
گروه بندی کرده
I grouped all the documents and counted 8 types of documents.
8 نمود مثلا برای که وقت زیاد نشه
In order not to waste time, I will only name them.
معامله بین دو شهروند
First, the relationship between the citizens. For example, at that time it was all Tajikistan. The Kyrgyz living there were residents of Tajikistan. For example, in the village of Khoja Allah, a Tajik sold his yard, house and garden to a Kyrgyz and left for Khujam to himself.
خونه دو خونه توجیک یک
In the middle of the 2 Tajik houses, a Kyrgyz house was sold by our own Tajik with his own yard and house.
ولی حاضر ویو میگن که هر کجا
Now it is Kyrgyzstan. So small Kyrgyz territories appeared in the neighborhood. They brought a house with a yard and an apricot garden in Kyrgyzstan because they also counted the house and land with citizens. Therefore, some maps say that it's like a chess game.
در بعض جاها حالا من خریطه دیدید میگن حالتی شخمت یعنی حالت شطرنج.
One house is a Kyrgyz house, one house is a Tajik house, and one house is a Kyrgyz house. This is the result of buying and selling property. That for one thing.
دوم منصبدارای محلی
Second, local officials, for example, the heads of the 2 communities, sit having a cup of tea and say that our sheep graze on the high grounds, but cows don't walk high, they graze on the plain.
بلندی نمیرن در همواری شما چرا
For example, 2 Jamaat chairmen exchanged land between them. One said to transfer 1,000 sheep to our collective farm and gave a pasture in return. This pasture had been there in use for 20, 30, 50 years, and now they say it is their land.
میگه این زمینی ما بود چهارم
Fourth, the heads of these cities and districts, unfortunately, if we say in 1958, there are documents signed by both sides, the city chairman and the deputy of the city chairman, and the head of the region, who said that this land now belongs to the Kyrgyz. And there are ministries and departments. For instance, the Ministry of Agriculture of Tajikistan exchanges with the Ministry of Agriculture of Kyrgyzstan that during winter our cattle will be in your pastures, and during summer your cattle will be in our pastures. This is how they did it for 10, 20, 50 years, and now they consider this pasture as their own. And the last document, and this is the official rental agreement document. Some areas were officially rented, but the date has already expired. Now they say it is our land. The head of the community and the collective of farm has to talk about it. It has to be signed. So then we tell them, brothers, there is an act of temporary land use. There is not a document that defines the border between the 2 nations. There are cases when one head of the collective farm swaps land with another head of the collective farm, even sold. Unfortunately, there are places where he sold. Does not change the official boundary between the 2 states. It may be a land use document for a period. It has expired. Its use is over, so the set of the document submitted by the neighboring party has the same values. So the big question is, where is our strength point? Our strength point is that we speak from documentations that have the official standards of a document defining a state boundary, not between 2 shepherds and 2 districts or regional chairmen. That is why we're not saying that we're not going to challenge any piece of land that you have such a document for. Now, why is it important to rely on such documents? The Constitution of the Soviet Union as the primary rights defining the document of the Soviet period define the mechanism for dividing, defining and changing boundaries between. It set forth 3 points. It said that the borders of the Republic members of the Union could not be changed without their consent. That's point 1. Secondly, the boundaries of the Union republics would be formalized after approval by the Soviet legislature. The 2 parties agree the right to Moscow. There, the Supreme Soviet of the USSR must confirm that this is indeed the border between Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan. Then the 3rd step is the decision of the Supreme Body of the Soviet Union must be re-adopted by the 2 republics. Consent is not something that the president or secretary says over the phone or otherwise that I agree, but consent is in the form of decision made by the Supreme Council of that republic. If it goes through 3 stages, this document is the document that confirms the state border. If you take the whole history and all the documents of the two parties for 100 years, only documents from 1924 to 1932 on the division of the borders went through this procedure. That is why we say that only documents of 1924 and 32 are official. I say this with full responsibility that from January the 1st, 1932, when Tajikistan last officially approved its borders by decision of Supreme Soviet, to December 7th, 2022, 19 years and an official document on the change of the border between the two countries has not been adopted. There is a document between the two chapters, between two heads of collective farms, but there is no official document defining a state border between the two countries or changing even an inch over the past 90 years. That is why we say that the documents of 1924-32 are the only documents that define the border. They are the only documents that pass the formality. These are the only documents that can be relied upon. There is such a fine point in here that we say to our neighbors that if we do not accept the documents of 1924 and 32, the situation will end up going back to the period before the formation of the Soviet Union. You see, the period of the Emirates of the Bukhara and the Tsarist Russia, and both sides lacked subjectively an ownership of the negotiation, because I personally think the documents of 1924 to 32 are very bad documents, unfair and cruel to the fate of the Tajik people. In the same period, all of our lands were destroyed. To date, these are the only documents about which we can say that there are such documents. During the period of the Emirate and Tsarist Russia, there are other disputes and lands. After the October Revolution, we have 3 states in Central Asia until 1924. That is the Khwarezm Republic, the Turkestan Republic, and then, since 1920, the Bukhara People's Socialist Republic. On November 24th, 1924, a commission called the Liquidation Committee of the Central Asia, the Liquidation Committee, was established by a decision of the Soviet Union. What did this committee do? The dissolution of 3 Central Asian states, which were created after the Soviet Union, created new republics of the Soviet Union on the basis of nationality. Unfortunately, why did I say that these documents were cruel to us? Because you see, in these documents establishing the Central Asian republics, the Republic of Uzbekistan, the Republic of Turkmenistan, the Republic of Kazakhstan, Tajikistan was not established as a republic. This very letter that Shirin Shah Temur wrote to Stalin, in which he wrote that 800,000 Tajiks lived there, why don't they have a state in the section? This letter got him killed. At the same time came the realization of why the Tajiks were the majority of the population and they didn't get the state in the separation. Or rather, Tajikistan was created as an autonomous republic within the Republic of Uzbekistan in the same division. This is cruel to us. How was the Kyrgyz Republic created at this point? The Kyrgyz Republic was not created in this division as part of these republics. but the Kyrgyz Republic was created as an autonomous region of the Kyrgyzstan with the Russian Federation. Therefore, the division made by the Liquidation Committee in 1925 was approved by the Presidium of the Supreme Soviet of the USSR as a division of the Central Asia.
رئاست شورای عالی ازبکستان هم رئاست شورای عالی روسیه تصدیق کردند. چرا این مهم است؟ چون که همون
Why is this important? Because at the same time Tajikistan is part of the Uzbekistan and Kyrgyzstan is part of Russia. So the same two states that made up this current two countries approved the division. Then they split up with the Supreme Council of the Autonomous Republic themselves. Of course, Kyrgyzstan became an autonomous republic after 1970, and thus the division of 1924 was formalized. This is the Kyrgyz Republic at the same time of its formation as part of the Russian Federation. This is the Voruch at the end. Voruch falls into the territory of Kyrgyzstan.
تأسیس قرقیزستان ببینید همین خریطه نیست.
This is not a map. This is a sketch plan of the map of Kyrgyzstan in the Cartographic Bureau in the Soviet Union, signed by the head of the Cartographic Bureau and his secretary. See below. This is an official document.
این سندی رسمی است.
If the maps are printed by any printing company, it is used as a document. But this is a schematic plan of the map of Kyrgyzstan at the time of creation, and if you see the bottom of the blue part, Voruch is not visible in Kyrgyzstan.
Voruch در داخل قرقیزستان نیست. اون کمانی که درون رفته است کبود، اون Voruch است.
Here's the blue part that goes inside. It is the same as Voruch. Voruch was no longer with Kyrgyzstan on the day that it was formed. It's signed. It's even written in ink. It's not a printed map from a store. It is in the archives of the Soviet Union. We were saying that our current borders were confirmed when we were part of Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan was part of Russia, and these documents from 1924 to 1927. Now, why are we saying that the 1929 documents was an important event when Tajikistan left Uzbekistan? If you know the following map, Tajikistan was part of Uzbekistan except for Sukht province. As a matter of fact, without the Sukht region, not without the Khujand region. Look at the map of the Tajikistan in 1932, the first official map of Tajikistan after its full creation. See, this is the green part of the Autonomous Republic of the Tajikistan, which came out of Uzbekistan. The yellow part, Khujand region, separated from Samarkand region of the Republic of Uzbekistan. And became part of Tajikistan when Tajikistan was formed. In other words, that's how Voruch appeared. This is a map from 1932. At the time of arrival, Voruch was connected to the territory of Tajikistan. Now, the disputed territories, Andarak and Khistevars, are all here in Tajikistan. This is the moment of the formation of the Republic of Tajikistan, which was formed when Tajikistan was formed with the annexation of the Khujand region. About Badakhshan, even at the level of the president of the Kyrgyz Republic was done an irresponsible and groundless statement. If we raise the documents of 1925 to 1927, then Maghreb will be ours. He said the same thing in his interview too, but all the archives show that there is no such thing. It is marked as the Pamir region. January 2nd, 1925 as an autonomous region of Badakhshan, even before the formation of Kyrgyzstan. Kyrgyzstan was founded in 27 and became the republic in 36.
ولایت بدخشان حداقل 11 سال پیش
Badakhshan province was founded at least 11 years before Kyrgyzstan was formed and joined Tajikistan. It's like saying to a person 11 years older than you that you are my child.
بنابراین یگان گونه
So any statement to the contrary, if you take away the documents 24, 25, 27, it once again shows that the Badakhshan belongs to Tajikistan, not Kyrgyzstan.
تعلق نداشتن بدخشان رو نشان می‌دهد. ببینید یک منطقه سه رنگی هست اگر ببینید
Look, there is a multicolored region, a region of purple, red, blue. These are three provinces, which there are only 209,000 hectares. About the same disputed lands. That's 21,000 hectares. That's 209,000 hectares.
این 211 است و 209 209,000 هکتار. این بنفشی کلانش این
209,000 hectares, and the largest violet is the Isfana area, the ancient Tajik area.
کبوتش هست منطقه سلوکتا کنی.
Here's the blue, Sulukta, the coal mine of Sulukta, and the long red one is the community of Zambrug. These are all Tajik names of ancient Tajik areas.
ولی این سه منطقه بعد تأسیس
However, after the formation of Tajikistan in 27 and 30,
سال 30 با قرار
these three areas were taken away from Tajikistan and given to Kyrgyzstan by decision of the Soviet Union.
قرقیزستان داده شده است. ما چی میگیم؟
We say that the lands have documents, whether they are fair or not, they have documents. We do not have a dispute on this now.
ما حاضر برای این بحث نداریم.
However, if the neighboring country says we deny the documents of 1924 and 27, they will be rejected too. In that case, the disputed area would be 420,000 hectares, because the existing 211,000 hectares are added to the 209,000 hectares officially granted. This was given in 1927, 29, 30, but there is no claim at this time. If they don't accept a set of these documents, that would also be a moot point. 420,000 hectares.
این خریطه جمهوری ازبکستان
See, this is a map of the Republic of Uzbekistan from 1947. The dispute between Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan is no longer our dispute. After the joint commission of the two countries approved and the Presidium of the Supreme Soviet of the USSR determined the borders between Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan.
شورای عالی SSR سرحدهای بین قرقیزستان و ازبکستان رو
When Kyrgyzstan became a republic in 1936, that's when it happened.
یک اداره بسیار معتبر است با نام
There's a very respected office called the GUK. It was the same in the Soviet Union. The main directorate of cartography, the head of cartography.
همین گوک SSR همین خریطه
GUK USSR issued this map.
یعنی در همین جا ببینید که این
The signature here is the official map of 1949, which defines the common borders of Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan
و در همین جا هم دقیقاً
since 1947, and it is also known that Ворух is not on the territory of Kyrgyzstan.
سالهای 20 و
And these are all of the territorial disputes in 1920s.
همسایه این رو
Now moving on to the documents of the neighboring country. In short, when the neighboring side knows that relying on the documents of 1924, 25, 27, and 1932 completely proves that the land belongs to Tajikistan, they present a package of documents after 1932 at negotiations.
مذاکرات مطرح میکنن همین تمام حجت‌های اینا رو با 4
We divide all documents into 4 packages because it is created in the same way.
وجود آمده است. یکم بسته حجت‌های سال 49
The first package of documents is from 1949. What are the 49 documents? In 1949, a parity commission was established between the two countries,
تأسیس شده است و این کمیسیون
i.e. equal bilaterally,
منطقه‌های بحثناک رو
and that's what the commission is called.
دقیقاً نامش است درباره حل مسائل استفاده بری او
The Council of Ministers of Kyrgyzstan sent an official letter to the Council of Ministers of the Republic of Tajikistan.
با مکتوب رسمی سال 1949 به شورای وزیران جمهوری تاجیکستان مراجعت کرده است و در این مراجعت گفته است که از شما
And said that we ask you to transfer these lands to Kyrgyzstan.
قرقیزستان دهید و چرا این ذکرش مهم است؟
Why is it important to mention this?
خودی
Because to write a letter and ask Tajikistan for this land is an acknowledgement
زمین اعتراف این است که همین زمین تاجیکستان است. وگرنه او چرا مکتوب نویسه
that it is Tajik land. Otherwise, why would he write a letter and ask Tajikistan to give it back if it is his property? That's why he wrote a letter, and most importantly, the leadership of Tajikistan showed great wisdom at the time. At that time, it was Ustad Gafurov. They did not write a letter saying that the division of the state borders according to the Article 14 of the Constitution of the USSR is the competence of the Supreme Soviet of the Soviet Union. We could not solve this problem. They diplomatically rejected. Therefore, the 1949 documents were not approved by the government and the Supreme Soviet of the Republic of the Tajikistan, but were rejected. Therefore, we say that the 1949 documents are not official for us. This one. The second set of documents from 1958 to 59. At the same time, the dispute reached their peak. A commission was established, and this commission was just to determine the use of water and land on this border. And here, if you cut down, at the end, there is another letter from the Council of Ministers of Tajikistan to the Council of Ministers of Kyrgyzstan. The ministers of Tajikistan are again asking to give us this land. The only difference is that this time the local commissions and governments were actually working on it before the Councils of Ministers response letter. Here, unfortunately, the document on the transfer of land was officially signed by Tajikistan at the level of local government. What does this mean? In 1958, the deputy mayor of Isfara and the mayor of Leninabad region signed a document of bilateral commission on the use of land and water, in which the document stated that the land belonged mainly to Kyrgyzstan. And the Kyrgyz, using this document, immediately approved as their state border at the level of Supreme Soviet. However, when this document got to the Supreme Council of Ministers of Tajikistan, fortunately, the Supreme Council of Ministers of Tajikistan rejected this document and wrote an official letter to the Kyrgyzstan that it was not in our competence and that it would be decided by the Association of the Supreme Council. And under this pretext, they rejected this document. So the 1958 document was regionally approved but not adopted by the central government of the Republic of Tajikistan, which has the power to determine the border. That is why we say that the documents of 1950s are also considered official as they were adopted by a commission. It is a working commission. It has to be approved by the political body of the state, the legislative body of the state, for it to become a border. And the last package of the Soviet Union, the most important package of 1989, there was a joint commission. This commission worked for a long time, and the chairman of the commission is well known. He was the first deputy prime minister at that same time, and the 1989 commission has a good place, a place of weakness. The good thing is that few months of work resulted in the determination of the entire state border. The 1989 commission, unlike the 1959 commission, was called to determine the boundary line between the republics. Other commissions were related to the use of water and land. However, the task of 1989 commission was to define the border because the republics already had a sense of independence at the end of the Soviet period in 1989, a period of reconstruction. Therefore, the title of the commission was not to use the land and water, but to determine the state border line between the two republics. So the 1989 commission worked hard, writing every meter of the line border. It made maps and topographies but the same commission considered mainly lands as belonging to Kyrgyzstan. It was signed at the level of the President of the Republic of Tajikistan. So the Kyrgyz accepted it, and the state border of the Kyrgyz Republic in 1990 at the level of the Supreme Soviet of Kyrgyzstan. But when this document went to the Supreme Soviet of Tajikistan, the Supreme Soviet of Tajikistan rejected the results of 1989. It did not ratify, that is, he said that these documents are completely harmful. The borders of Tajikistan are the same as those approved in 1927-32. These documents have no official status. The Supreme Soviet of Tajikistan abolished the Border Commission and created a new commission. The name of the head of both commissions is there. This way, the Supreme Soviet of Tajikistan did not accept it, rejected it, abolished the whole commission. It created a new commission. This means that the 1989 documents were not executed by the Republic of Tajikistan. So when Kyrgyzstan says based on the 1989 documents, we say it's invalid because our state didn't accept it. And a very important state document that shows the 1989 documents and its worthlessness is that after Tajikistan did not accept it, the Kyrgyz side complained to the Supreme Soviet of the Soviet Union, and history teachers all know that at that time, during the reconstruction period, the USSR had a bicameral parliament, and the second house was called the House of Nations, whose chairman was former President Comrade Nishanov. And when it came to this house, the deputies heard the National House of the Supreme Soviet of the USSR also annulled the results of the 1989 Commission. They decided to cancel it. That is, it was declared invalid. And the same telegram came to the government of Tajikistan on behalf of the chairman of the USSR Council of Nations. This also shows that we did not accept and recognize these documents in 1989. This is why there are three valid documents as a document between the collective forum, district, city, and commission, but there is no document defining the state border, which our state, two states, as we said in the beginning, passed the procedure. It is not legitimate for us to define the border based on it. And the last package of documents submitted by Kyrgyzstan, and very recently this year, including by you, if you paid attention in the speech of the President of the Kyrgyz Republic at the UN, listed those documents which we have to solve according to these documents. What is the collection of these documents? 5 documents were signed during the period of independence. We will mention one of them and explain one of them. The first act, that is the agreement establishing a union of independent states of December 1999. The second is the agreement of amity between Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan. The third is a declaration by Moscow. The fourth is the declaration by Almaty. The fifth is the CIS Charter. These are the 5 documents that Kyrgyzstan says to leave as historical documents. Let us make a decision accordingly. These documents have a special place for Kyrgyzstan because in these documents it is written that the parties recognize the inviolability of each other's value. The parties recognize each other's existing borders. We have signed, and so has the Kyrgyzstan. The Kyrgyz say you signed these documents that both sides recognize each other's border. It consists of borders, not boundaries. That's a point in the CIS agreement.
چی خیلی میگیم که
We say this discussion has two problems.
مشکل دارد. شما ببینید در این سخنرانی
You see, in the same speech by the foreign minister to the UN, there was this response.
که سازشنامه تأسیس ایدم موضوعش تنظیم مرزها نیست. اوجا بحثی حقوقی، حقوق شناسی و استادای حقوق.
There's a legal dispute, and lawyers know better. According to the Vienna Convention of 1969, this agreement cannot be used to regulate the border. The President Convention is about the legal status of international agreements. It's an agreement about agreements that we can use. And there it says that a contract is only valid in its subject.
تنها در موضوع خودش اعتبار دارد. این چی معنی دارد؟ یعنی مثلا
What this means, that is, the contract for the establishment of the CIS is not prescribed. The purpose of this treaty is to create an international organization called the CIS. It defines the relationship between the two countries, but this agreement does not define the question of the border between the two countries. This is why we say it has no theme.
دوم اینکه از نظر عملی
Secondly, in practical terms, none of the CIS member states have settled their borders accordingly to the contract establishing the CIS.
سازشنامه تأسیس ایدم حل نشده است. مثلا قرقیزستان
For example, Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan signed this week did not speak on the basis of the CIS charter. They are based on negotiations and the agreements of both sides, or that the dispute between the Armenia and Azerbaijan, the dispute between Russia and Ukraine, Russia and Georgia, or any dispute about the CIS space based on the CIS agreement is not solved, as it solves the creation of the organization and the relation between the countries, or the agreement between Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan, which they say should be solved on the same grounds. Of course, the agreement states the two parties recognize each other, recognize the borders, but what do we say in response in the agreement? And in the contract of amity, we recognize, yes, that we recognize existing borders.
ولی سرحد موجوده چی است؟
But what are the existing borders?
سرحد موجوده سرحدی است که
They
در
claim that the
لحظه
existing border is the border that was owned at the time of the collapse of the Soviet Union. This is the existing border, the moment the CIS was formed.
ما میگیم که نه،
We declare the existing border is the border approved by the act defining the state border. The same existing boundary. We recognize the existing boundary wherever there is that document, not wherever it is occupied.
همچون سرحدی موجوده اعتراف میکنیم، نه هر کجایی که اشغال شده است. بنابراین ما در جواب
So, we answered that these existing borders arrangement did not solve the problem,
رو حل نمیکند، زیرا ما
because we only know the existing board as a border officially approved by an international instrument.
دولتی شده است. و چرا این مهم است؟ نه تنها
Why is that important?
از نظر
It is important not only from a legal point of view, but also from a practical point of view. If we recognize the existing borders, then these lands will all belong to Kyrgyzstan, because at the moment, it is in their hands.
حالا یک بحث است با نام بازی حجت ها.
At the end of the article, there is a discussion of the documentary argument, the content of which is that the use of various documents is not unconscious, depending on the interest. Look at these three lands we have said were given to Kyrgyzstan based on the documents from 1924.
ما میگیم که اگر سال 24
We say that if we do not count 1924, you will return these. They say that in this case, the 1924 Supreme documents are correct. But on the contrary, if the CIS agreement states that any land that was in someone's possession at the time of the collapse of the USSR, it belongs to them. We have 160,000 hectares. Over the years, we have returned almost all of the lands of Kyrgyzstan that was in our possession at the time of the collapse of the USSR, due to the expiration of the lease, including 62,000 hectares of land in Maghreb, district. We had it until 2004. In 2004, we ceremonially lowered the flag, gave them a celebration, thanked them for 50 years of use, and gave it to them. In other words, we did an act of good neighborhoodness with the law. By agreement, if we take into account the concept of existing borders at the time of the collapse of the USSR, we return these lands because they were in our hands at the time of this collapse. So, these internal disputes and their scientific and historical conclusions are known, not necessarily to be repeated here. What is the political conclusion of this article? That is to show the whole reality of this issue and the position of Tajikistan. That was the first objective. But the second goal was to create a general opinion and the correct national understanding of this issue. So, what was the main overall conclusion? First, what was the status of both sides of the dispute? Of course, we should know that Tajikistan is involved in this dispute as a country that owns lands and has rights. Kyrgyzstan is a debtor country in this dispute. So it's like we rent a house and the lease has expired, the tenant doesn't leave, he says he likes this house, I'll stay here. We say the lease on the property has expired, the Soviet area intercollector rules have expired, get out. He doesn't go out. Hence, the Tajik side is the rightful owner, the Kyrgyz side is the debtor. Second, the second question of truth and justice before conscience, before history, before justice, we say that legal justice and historical justice are on the side of Tajikistan in this dispute. That is, we have no claim to neighboring lands, we have no claim to the rightful land of the neighboring land. And from this point of view, the law is on the side of Tajikistan. Third, what is the goal of both sides? Tajikistan's goal in this dispute is to reclaim its legitimate land and restore its territorial integrity. Kyrgyzstan's goal is to unofficially formalize the lands in its hands. To ensure formality, the foreign minister's statement said that the Kyrgyz side is trying to formalize the land it owns. This is their goal. And the main point we made in the title of the article is that we need to know for sure that Tajikistan is not an aggressor country. Because when all the documents show that this land belongs to Tajikistan, is legitimate land of this country, how can a country encroach on its land? What is violence? In other words, to invade someone else's land by armed or violent means, usurping it, attacking it. So every Tajik should keep in mind that we do not have a problem of aggression here. We did not encroach on someone else's land, but we demanded our rightful land back. This justice is very necessary. Of its importance, I am telling you now. Because in September of this year, in order to strengthen the Ukrainian war, the Russian Federation announced a mass mobilization. You see, there are certain sectors that defended the position of the government. But some of the young people ran away. They ran away. You saw thousands and thousands flee to the borders of Russia. Even the plane tickets to escape from Russia became 10 times more expensive. Look, Dushanbe to Moscow, Dushanbe was $200, became $5,000. They went to Dushanbe, to Istanbul, to Tbilisi, wherever they could. They flew. Why did they flee? Of course, we can say that some of them had a weak sense of patriotism. Some of them were afraid, said it was fearful, but most ran away because they did not understand the logic of this war. They did not believe in the justice of this war. They didn't really believe that this war was sacred. It's very important how people feel about it. So first of all, the purpose of this article was to show where is our interest, where is our position, where is our justice in this argument. Likewise, if we clearly feel the justice of this issue in our conscience, in our minds, then an individual both feels and defends the correctness of the state position. Therefore, the main goal of this article is to show where is our interest, where is our position, where is the justice in this dispute.
همچنین ما خلاصه ششم آخرین این بود که
And also, the last sixth conclusion was that we should know for sure that the insistence or the position of the state or the leadership of the Republic of Tajikistan on the return of these lands is in the national interest. This is a necessary step for the state. Therefore, we must defend the position of the state with the same confidence, with the same correct understanding.
باید موقع دولت رو حمایت کنیم. اینجا مسئله این است که
The problem is that this defense, if it is with slogan, with propaganda, with emotion, as a momentary manifestation, but if the defense is based on a firm understanding, on accurate information, on a firm conviction that we know exactly what it is about and where it belongs to us, where it should be taken and where it should be protected, and this defense will be sustainable. So the last sentence of this article says that every belief must have logic and a solid foundation. Being aware of this information, having such a powerful historical, legal, documentary base, we must have a balanced and informed approach to this issue. And if our national position has such a solid foundation behind it, with science, with logic, equipped with documents in justice, with a sense of patriotism, it seems will stand on a solid base. Thank you for your attention.